everybody
What
is
is the cost of
hardship.
living increase nationally? I mean, is that 3%? What is the, kind of always has been?
The increase from last July to this July is 1%.
1% as of July?
July of 19 to July 20, the CPI, Consumer Price Index, went up 1%.
Well, I don't know what it is.
So just to try to clear this up, to make it simple, I calculated an adjustment on the base rate, and that was 3%. So if you're comparing someone who has longevity, they would get another 3% on each of those 1%, so it would be slightly more than 3 for those individuals, but not on the base rate.
But that's not contracted. I mean, the
No,
city
it's
council
not.
can do what they
We do
desire.
have certain individuals in the union that do get longevity. So I mean, I can't change the facts. I mean, that's what they are. So if you'd like something else, I can't touch the rates in the union, but if you have another suggestion, we'd love to hear it.
The union isn't adjusting any rates or anything. They're not, no conversation on it.
No. We have a union contract through 2021 on that. We're looking at other communities because we're sensitive to that, and we're seeing everything from 0 to 5% and anywhere in between. And so when you get to the end of the day, you really have to decide what you want to do for your own city and what makes the most sense for you.
I just think things are so volatile and we don't know what's going to happen next. I just think we should hold the line. It has nothing to do with, I'm just saying that over 3%, and you've got a taxpayer out there that has lost their job and is on unemployment, or their business is under hardship. It's pretty hard to say that we think our city employees should have over 3% pay increase. It's hard to say that.
And there are some stimulus packages and whatever that everybody's getting, so.
So what, in essence, what you're talking about is non-union. Union workers.
I guess we are stuck with union, but I guess in the negotiations, if the non-union people don't get an increase, then I would look at, when you're doing the union contract, that they would understand why their wages wouldn't go up. I know it's a very sensitive thing, and it's only because of the pandemic, the hardships, the unemployment, all that, and I think you understand that. I would assume that you understand. I know it's a tough one, and I know the employees are dead set against it and want the over 3%. I would too, but I guess if you look at the levy and you're trying to hold costs. That's just my opinion. The rest of the council can go for over 3%, but.
May I make a comment? I've been here 20 plus years. In the time, I've seen where we get 0. I've seen where we get, because we're trying to maintain the budget, we're trying to hold the budget. There's never a year that we get that 4 or 5% to make up for that 1 or 2 that we lost, or the year we didn't get anything. There's never that catch-up. So every time you take and you reduce what everybody else is getting, we never get caught back up. My peers around me are making more than I am in my same position I'm doing. Same thing I think in the chief and other positions. There's never the year that we make the catch-up. There's always that we give, and I'm sorry that it sounds selfish, but There's not the year that I get back. My opinion.
I just want to share too that I've talked to people that have taken pay cuts to keep their job. That's all I'm saying. And I don't think any employees were laid off from the city. Part-time? No, part-timers were laid off.
Yeah, we laid off how many
And
part-timers?
did they go on unemployment then?
Yes, they did.
Okay, all right. So we were pretty fortunate that we did not have to lay.
That's one
anybody off.
advantage of having a small staff.
And I only have 2 dogs, so.
So now we,
I just thought it had to be said, and if nothing is done on it, I can't do anything about that, but I just think that the public should
unspoken.
know that we said, that we are aware of it, and that we should be holding costs. It's tough to have someone come up and say, I'm unemployed, or I'm getting cut. I know people that took a 15% pay cut. It's just hard to say, okay, but that doesn't matter to us, we're gonna give over 8%.
well, it's,
I don't know that I've heard over 3. I think you have a situation where we've had agreements with our unions, and that's what we agreed to for the term of the union contract. And then you have the salaried employees. And where I used to work, everybody got a different raise. I was a salaried employee. If I did a terrible job, I might have got a reduction or no increase, all right? So they varied from year to year, and there was times when things were really bad. But and I don't know the 3% times whatever the salaried payroll is. I don't know the size of that increase, so that I could compare it to other things we've talked about today or last week. But I think if you truly believe that all of these people that work for the city, and there isn't that many of them, are doing an acceptable job, I like to retain them. I think it costs a lot more money to try to get somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And I don't look at the 3. I'm sorry people lose their job, but I don't know how somebody's loss over here has to impact these people. That's kind of it's a sad thing, but I'm not going to shove that burden on them. We have to still provide services to the people that live here. And I just don't want any disruption in that service. So I look at it as it's in the budget 3. And I think that's probably been what Ted said, kind of the normal here.
I look at it that we want to keep good people, and we're running pretty lean and mean. I understand what you're saying, but we don't hire extra people that we don't need. The people that are here are doing their job and more, in my opinion. Thanks.
I'm not saying that nobody, that they're not doing their job. I'm just pointing out that it should be brought forward, and if it's not everybody on the council thinks it's okay not to give it over 3% increase, then so be it. I just feel like it should be brought forward when we're talking budget.
Thank you.
My take on the whole thing is that we got to be responsible to the taxpayers across the board, and I would like to see a flat levy, however we can get there, and I think all parts have got to contribute to it. So,
and as I mentioned earlier when we started this conversation, with the adjustments that we've made, we are flat as it stands right now. The things that will change that is what your final decision is on whether you issue certificates for a plow truck. There's a substantial amount of money in the CARES that we can pull in that we wouldn't have to levy for to comply with that impacts everybody. So we're looking at those things, and we can get to 0 with where we're at right now.
So are we talking about that 3% that you didn't need? You're not budgeting for contingency?
I'm not talking about the 3% anymore.
But when you say flat, are we going to be able to go back to decreasing that tax levy, not the rate, the levy by that 3%?
Do you mean to go to 0 or go -3?
Negative.
Well, if you can do the math, you've got 20,000, 10,000 for the radios. And between two vehicles, that's 80. So there's your 3%.
And maybe we can even go further.
We started at the beginning of this, we talked about the roads, and I think it was 997 for reconstructs. Is that true? I thought we were gonna cut that back by doing some overlays instead of reconstructs. I mean, it seems to me that we beat that around the bush a little bit, now we're right back to where we started.
The motion from Public Works Commission, and do you have it, Mr. Shrupter, that
I've got it
motion?
if you want to read it. Let's even give it, there's all the motions they made.
The motion by Tom Swenson to recommend to the council that the council moves ahead with the recommendation of the city engineer and myself, Ted Strand, to complete 419,000 of road overlays and 1,086,000 of road reconstruction projects in 2021. And all were in favor of that motion. And that was the motion that came forward from Public Works. And that's reflected in the budget today.
Okay, well, what I know about that, and it's not everything, I'll admit, but we got a little bit of money that we could cut out of that thing. We need some help getting our budget to where we need to go.
That doesn't affect the levy though, right?
Next year. Well, if we,
It does to the, because we built in the 419,000 of the non-overlays for that. So that's where we got into the discussion at Public Works is, okay, you've got a $30 million asset and you're trying to maintain it. If it's going to last 30 years, if you expect it to last 30 years, then you have to keep reinvesting your depreciated cost back into that asset. And this approximates that. If you don't want to do that, what'll happen is eventually you will get behind and it will come back and kick you. And you'll find yourself getting behind each year and having to make different decisions on roads. So what we're trying to do is to avoid that. And that was pretty much the bulk of the discussion. And we went all the way around the circle at Public Works saying, well, let's not do anything to let's do more because it's favorable to do that. And so we ended back up with the motion that we have up on the screen right now.
I don't disagree with that, Mike.
Yeah, we can clearly cut back expenses this year. We're just kicking the can down the road. It's not that we're wasting money. It's just a matter you do spend it this year, next year, year after, year after. It's going to be needed to be spent. And we've just come out of a big cycle where a lot of road improvements were kicked down the road. And I think a couple of councils ago, they caught up. I'd like this not to get too far back behind.
There's a couple different thoughts on the whole thing, though, and we talked about that in Public Works pretty extensively. This year, the city has taken on a bunch. And if we can move a couple of those projects down, and even the thought about moving a bunch of them down and having a road rebuild year, and that's all we do. Bond and levy for a bunch of money. But so there's multiple ways to look at it. And I'm just saying this year, if we want to flatten it and get it down and catch up on some of this other stuff we're doing. Well, I mean, that's what I would be supportive of. And I don't believe that there was a council action on that. I think there's been just discussion about it.
It was discussion in Public Works, and that's the motion that came out of Public
Right.
Works. To you, as the council members.
And I respect Public Works,
Mike
but,
has put that into the budget for the 2021.
yeah.
And we're at essentially zero today, or we're at zero right now, is what he's telling us.
Yep.
So we've achieved that. Now, if you want to take something else and back off to,
Well-
less than where we're zero, we need that direction, so.
Or if we need to want to go to the sewer thing or something else. I mean, there's more of a conversation that we have to have about all this stuff in order to,
And one thing I look at overall is where do I think we're going to end up at the end of the year? And we all know we get into the budget and we get to the middle of January and something changes. Your budget is only as good as the day you do it, because it will change, but you want to have the flexibility to respond to those changes. And the best way I can try to illustrate that is if I look at, this is on page 9 of your packet. Every year, when I do the budget, I try to make the operations of the sewer fund come out to zero. Because we've got two components in there. We have a debt service component that we can't touch, and then we have an operating component that we kind of cross our fingers and say, well, I hope our rates are high enough and we don't have any repairs, and we collect enough new connection charges that we can use those to offset our costs. So when I look at the sewer fund, I'm looking at $500,000 in the hole on an operating basis, okay? But I know that I have depreciation of about $315,000, meaning we're allocating the cost of our system getting older. That leaves me a difference of $230,000 that has to come from somewhere. It's either going to come as a transfer from the general fund, or it's going to come from our best guess at how many levy dollars we can tolerate to move over there. But it has to come from somewhere. And some years we get lucky. We have a big project and we get $186,000 in fees, but most years we don't. Right now, as it stands today, we're not flat in that fund. We're in a deficit. And that's even with getting $26,000 last week in connection charges for a project you see going along on 66. So we're going to transfer something over there. We just don't know what. So you're either going to transfer some of your current year levy to subsidize that, or you're going to dig into your fund balance in the general fund to reduce it. So just be aware of that. When I built this budget in the revised model, you'll see next week with these changes, I've got some of these changes incorporated into that already. What you see is I'm taking this number out down here, that extra unidentified levy number, and assuming that if we have a deficit in there, you'll make a transfer from the general fund to cover it at year end, because that is your policy. Okay? So just be aware of that.
okay, Mike, that 315, is that what people pay in for the sewer now? Is that where that dollar comes from?
No, Dave, that's depreciation. It means you have an asset and it's being used up. And I have to figure depreciation of the system as an operating expense. But depreciation isn't something you write a check out for. It's not a bill you get.
Yeah.
It's it's a non-cash item. So I'm looking at how much cash do we have to generate to not be in a deficit. Okay?
So how much do our monthly, that people pay in for the sewer, what do we get for that?
It's about $25,000 a month, between $22,000 and $26,000 a month. So I'm looking at,
I mean, that's why it's close to 315. That's why I kind of jumped there. But
that's I've got, my best guess as of today is we'll generate about $305,000 of cash through user fees in that fund. So as you can see, the user fees don't even cover the cost of the plant
well,
depreciation.
they never have, yeah.
No, and they never have. So that's why you're going to have a fee discussion again.
So are you
Public Works.
opening the door to talk about increasing the user fee now? I mean, are we going to do that today, or are we going to wait on that?
That won't get you a lot. That's just,
It won't give you a lot. It'll give you a little bit, but it won't be a lot.
Well, but part of my, is if you go back 10 years, I mean, we've increased it a lot already.
Not nearly where it should be to
Maybe, but I mean, it was
pay for
$30
itself.
a month not too long ago, and now it's 50, I believe. So,
line 5 is discussion of the user fees.
Yeah.
From the public's perspective, it's increased a lot. And I agree, it's always been a hole, you know, we're always dumping money in it, but
Yeah, in 2004, it was $30 a month, and now it's $50 a month,
what was it in 2010?
$36.
Yeah, I mean, it's increased substantially in the last.
But you also ran out of connection charges from the original construction to offset your operations, so you had to do something.
Yeah,
And just so you know, at the end of last year, 2019, we transferred about $40,000 over there to make it to get it to zero. So, and that was with a large connection charge. So,
So do you need any direction from us on, I'm just trying to think the next time we get together, what are we gonna look at something that's different than what we have here? In other words,
yeah,
are you gonna not plan on, well, are we gonna plan on, or are you gonna load a number so we can see what would happen if we'd buy 2 trucks? Because you're gonna have to pay for that next year. But I don't know how much that would be on an annual basis.
I think the easiest way to do that would be to talk about payments. You know, if you're looking at a plow truck this year and a fire truck next year, you know, it's possible you could, you know,
Are they 5-year certificates?
it'd be 5 years, yeah. So you're in that $20,000 to $25,000 payment on the truck Ted's looking at. You're at substantially more for the fire truck. If you did them together, you'd probably be in that, well, depending on the rate, you're probably going to be in the 200,000 plus range. And I can run some numbers on both of them. So you'd do 2 instead of 1. You'd probably do 1 this year to take care of the truck, and then another one in 2021 to take care of the fire truck.
So where would that 200,000 go on your sheet there?
I'd show it as new money from a certificate and a like amount for the expense side, so it'd net to zero. And then we need to figure out what the payment would be on that and budget for that in 2021.
But that'll buck the levy up though. won't it?
Yes, it will.
A lot? 5 years on $1 million, 200,000 a year?
It would, yes.
Yeah.
We have about 2,000 households in Cross Lake, so you can do the arithmetic.
Oh. Well, we'd have to make a payment on the bond in 2021, the
Yes.
first year, and so if it's, say I don't know, what do they round up to, $1 million, let's just have to pay it off in 5 years. So every year we have to come up with $200,000.
Yeah.
And that number would have to be in this budget for next year because the first payment most likely would have to be paid next year.
Yep, and you want to generate the money
So
before you need
that
it.
zero levy increase
Won't hold.
won't hold if we buy the fire truck and the,
That'd be about $100 per house on the average.
That's correct.
so that's why I brought it up so everybody understood. Plus, you know, I guess and in the budget for switching gears, the Moonlight extension, there's a lot of coordination with the county going on and with Melissa. I don't think we should stick it in 21 right now. What else did we have that we're talking about?
We looked at the biosolids also. Those are items I pulled out for this next version we'll talk about next week.
We don't really know what Ted's going to do yet with the truck, right, Ted? I mean, you said you were trying to decide on trade-ins or what was it? Or if you wanted it?
Yeah, right now I haven't made up my mind whether they're worth it to trade it in or keep them and just run them until there's nothing left. Because really, you're not going to get much for them for trade-in, so.
I would say to have a backup truck. I don't think it's worth it to trade them in.
I agree
Probably
with
just
Dave. Yeah.
park it and got it there when one goes down, so.
Yeah.
Probably worth more in parts when it's totally done.
Yeah, that international engine, if you finally get one that works, it'll be great.
Yeah.
Aaron?
I was going to say, if you keep the truck, you'll probably get a better price on the one you're buying.
Yeah, that's likely too. Yeah. We've seen that.
Okay. Have we pretty well beat this up for today?
Is it 5? Oh, God,
Yeah.
3:30? All right, I'm done. I just tried to,
Yep.
I was just trying to give him some flavor on what to show us next time, you know?
I'd
I
like
don't-
to talk a little bit more about possibly that 66 to 16 sewer extension next time, to see how that would, well, just to continue talking about it.
Change your levy a lot.
Well, it will, but it'll probably put it off to the next year, but whatever, you know.
We'll have more information from Phil after that.
Yeah.
So is it a fair statement to assume that project will not occur next summer?
Well, I don't know, but we need to decide in the next couple months whether it will or not. I think, quite honestly, I think we have to wait till after the election to find out what's gonna be happening next year, so. But I still think we should continue talking about it. You know,
The other things I just want the council to be aware of, every time you do these improvements and you improve how far and how much wastewater you're taking in, okay, it generates you revenue, but the biosolids and the chemical costs and electricity costs, all that goes up. So there's a yin and a yang to it. It's a benefit, but
well, sure, but your monthly contribution goes up too. So.
yeah, but that means that biosolids has to be done sooner, where we were talking
I
about.
didn't think the state was gonna require it for 3 to 5
Well,
years.
that's still up in the air. We haven't got that.
Well, that's not.
We'll show you the letters at the Public Works, and then you can, but all of that changes it, because it's gonna say, okay, you're gonna have to get a permit from the state of Minnesota to do an extension up there, okay? And they're gonna take and make the engineer do a review of the wastewater plant. Can it handle that flow? And the engineer's gonna go, okay, I'm gonna go down the checklist, and he's gonna go, oh, there's a weak point here in our biosolids. And the state's gonna say, okay, if you got a weak point in your biosolids program, or weak in the what you do with biosolids, you're gonna have to, at such and such a point, you're gonna have to do it. So then there'll be a timeline that'll generate. So all these things, extensions you do, have other steps that happen because of them. So I just want everybody aware of that, so.
Okay.
So I say this every meeting. If you have additional questions, please get them to me, if not the day before, so I can have a chance to answer them. I'll incorporate these changes into our next model, and we'll go from there. So I'll try to get another packet out to you as soon as I can.